Are you interested in purchasing a replica diecast similar to the one that Todd Kidd used to win this year's Ajax 200, the one that defending champion Cameron Atwood used to win the first night race at Disney, the one that Todd Kidd used to win his 10th milestone Ajax Cup victory at Belltown, or the one that Laquan Scranton used to win under the lights in the Ajax All-Star race? Well, if you are, you're in luck. Head on over to Circle B Diecast Plan B Sales and use coupon code ASCA on any orders $20 or more to acquire free shipping at checkout.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the ASCA Weekly Podcast. I am your host, Charles Fallon, back in here with another edition of the ASCA Weekly Podcast, as I just stated. And boy, oh boy, we got a ton of stuff to cover today. We got to start out with the defending champion making a championship statement potentially. Hey, if you can catch a couple breaks, if the points leader can run into some trouble over the course of the next 6 weeks and he can get a season back on track, don't count him out just yet. We also got to look at the state of the championship battle after a championship contender did DNF in the Advocare 200. A notable who we thought would be a rising star and an iconic ride. We're going to take a look at his sophomore struggles and double check and see if he's on the hot seat with his current team. The Craftsman Series title scrap just heated up a bunch after this week's thrilling Disney World 125. We're going to break that all down for you. We're also going to break down a veteran not returning to his current ride in 2025, which is a big opening when it comes to silly season. And where does that guy land and who takes over that ride for next season? We're going to talk about one of the sport's biggest young talents getting their big break in the Craftsman Series next year, and then previewing all the upcoming action next week, or this week, I should say, at Denver. So, alas, without further ado, let's get into it. But first, we got to shout out the ASA's premier partners first. First off, let's shout out at Paint Scheme Stalker on Instagram. Go give him a follow if you want to see some sexy paint schemes over there. Also, of course, the ASA's other premier partners, you already know them by now, Rowdy Energy and Circle B Diecast Plan B Sales. If you would like to cop, a diecast, a replica diecast to that of Cameron Atwood, the one that he used to score his second win of 2024 in last Saturday's Advocare 200. Hey, head on over to Circle B Diecast Plan B Sales, and if you cop a few more, you get your order up over $20. You can get free shipping with code ASCA. So once again, shout out to the sports premier partners, the podcast premier partners. Appreciate everything they have done keeping us going this season. And let's get into it, shall we? So basically, Cameron Atwood made the second half of the Advocare 200 a snoozer, because once he took the lead away from Shane Park, he was gone. He was just in another zip code. And we all know that Atwood is just on another level when it comes to saving his equipment, saving his tires. There's a reason why he has finished no worse than second at the Stone Yard since 2022, which is absolutely ridiculous that literally his finishes at the Stone Yard. Second, first, second at a track that tough. But we're talking Advocare here. And speaking of Advocare, Atwood became only the second driver, ironically enough, to score multiple victors at this track, joining Jimmy Hood in that category and becoming the first driver to go back-to-back at Advocare since, well, you guessed it, Jimmy Hood in 2017 and 2018. And it, Park kind of pulled over Shane Park, the pole sitter. He was leading early, but Atwood was right up on his tail. He was probably about to make the pass on lap 44, but then we had the caution for Ross Jackson blowing a tire. I'm going to talk more about him later. And, once we got the next green flag run going, Atwood raced in no time, getting right back up to Park's back bumper, and Park he was like, okay, I don't want to deal with this. This is way too early to be racing. I'm going to let you go. So he lets him go, and, well, Atwood never came back. Hey, the rest is history, basically. He led the final 127 laps and drove off and left the competition, especially on that long green flag run to the checkers. You already knew that no one was going to be able to track down Atwood. Maybe the only couple cars that were able to give him a run for his money if they had the track position were probably Randall Woods and Lucas Sambert. Surprisingly enough, what a run he had. Started 11th, finished 4th. What an incredible performance from him. But yeah, Woods and Sambert were really the only two that I saw were even close to the level of Atwood on this day. They were the only one that were running consistently the same lap times, and Healy was a couple tenths off as well. But everyone else, the field just had nothing for him. And that's just, a short track, a track that requires you to manage your tires, manage your equipment. It's Atwood's bread and butter. And that's probably why he's taken to short track racing so well. He has won 4 out of the last 10 short track races. He at least won 3 out of the last 10. So between those two, they won 7 out of the last 10 short track races. And it seems like, we were wondering who would fill the void of, the king of short tracks on Simi Hood started to kind of fall off a cliff and became washed, as the kids would say. Seems like we thought it would be Healy at first because he was just dominating, but you put Atwood and CJ Barrymore Racing equipment, give him equipment that he can compete with every single week with the best of the business week in and week out, and we're seeing the results. And he has proven to be an incredible short track racer. I mean, he always was, but he was held back so much by Tico Bound Motorsports equipment. And when I say held back, I mean, look at what the 10 team has done since Atwood left it in 2022. And Ryan Braun's not an awful driver by any means, but I mean, him and Atwood, it's like night and day behind the wheel of that machine. They've completely fallen apart, and outside of Doug Bound, Tiga Bound Motorsports is completely irrelevant on a weekly basis these days. While Atwood, of course, has completely risen to superstardom at the Cup level and, become one of the best drivers in the sport week in and week out, arguably the best short track racer in the sport, the defending champion, about to become tied as the highest paid driver of the sport, making $12 million next season. Oh, and he's also engaged to a Hollywood actress. So yeah, Atwood's made it big time, I think it's safe to say. And now he's at 9 career wins, tied with Healy, or I believe that's 11th on the all-time wins list. There's something close to that. They're both one win away from double digits, which is insane considering throughout the 2022 campaign, when Healy scored his 7th win, Atwood only had 1. And now they're both tied at 9. So that just kind of puts into perspective how much Atwood had to make up to catch Healy and even be in a position like this. And he's done it and now could potentially pass him. So you got to give all the props in the world to Cameron Atwood, especially with all the talk about how much he has struggled this season for good reason. He's had a horrible past month. He had no top 10 finishes since his win at Disney way back on March 27th. And then he comes out and he does that. That's impressive as hell. So congrats to Atwood. Is he back in the championship battle? No, not even close. He's going to need some help. He needs some serious help. And he's got the tracks to do it. Like you look at Denver, you look at the Stone Yard, you look at Computer. Those are all tracks that Atwood won at last season. So he could certainly bounce back at those. West Virginia, another really solid track for him as well. But he's going to need some help from, the points leader encountering some bad luck. And Diego Urquidy, man, this guy is just on another level. That is now, after this race, 9 straight finishes inside the top 6. So over half of the races this season, he's finished inside the top 6. Let that sink in for you. And it's 9 in a row. This isn't like 9 of 16 overall. 9 in a row at all different types of tracks, road courses, short tracks. You got big tracks, West Virginia, Computer Motors Speedway, the Stone Yard, like so many unique tracks. And he just continues to bring his A game week in and week out. And that's exactly why he's leading the points by 20 right now over Shane Park with 6 races to go. And then you throw on top of that Todd Kidd's DNF thanks to his incident with Doug Bowden, which is a shame for Kidd because he was running up inside the top 5 at his home track. I don't think he or anyone else for that matter had anything for Atwood, but he really could have used the points to at least keep him level with Park battling for second. Now he's 36 back in third and a lot closer to Randall Woods and Laquan Scranton in that battle than he is the championship battle between Urquidy and now Park. So I think this has kind of settled into a 2-horse race unless Diego can encounter some bad luck or maybe Park encounters some bad luck over the course of the next couple of weeks at Denver and Ajax, which is certainly possible, especially at Ajax. Anything could happen there, literally anything. But man, this is a big blow to Kidd's title hopes. I have a hard time thinking he's going to recover from this. Like, even if he does get a DNF from Urquidy and he capitalizes with a victory, he's still over a full race of points back from Diego is the problem. So, like, he's going to need a couple bad races from Urquidy, and the run that Diego's been on this season, you're going to lucky to even get one bad race out of him, let alone 2 or 3. Like, Diego's been in this position numerous times. And in fact, he's been in much worse positions than this. Go back to 2020 and his most recent championship and the comeback that he had to put on to catch all those guys, Healy, Kidd, and Renner. Those were the 3 it looked like we're going to be battling out for the championship. And Urquidy just comes out of nowhere and steals it from all of them. Like, he knows how to finish these seasons strong. He knows when he needs to turn up the wick. And the thing is, he's already turned up the wick this season. So it's not like he's just going to magically turn it off when he needs to turn it up the most. Like, no, he knows how to finish seasons strong. And I'm sure that 22 team, like, they've only led 42 laps this season, which is shocking. 2 wins, only 42 laps led, yet he holds a 20-point lead over Shane Park. And it just goes to show you, like, how consistent that team has been this season. And you really have to credit a lot of it to Urquidy's crew chief, Sheldon Price, and the job that he's done installing finesse into the 3-time champion, the ASCA legend, 25 career victories in this sport. Installing finesse has really, like, this isn't the flashy Diego Urquidy, the brass, the bold Urquidy that we're so used to seeing on his championship runs. It's a different version of him, but it's a far more consistent Diego. And it's certainly paying off when you get to these 16 race campaigns and you cannot afford to be racking up all these DNFs. Like, that's what derailed his championship hopes last season, were all the DNFs ironically caused by, his former rivals, Ayers and Scranton. So now that he's been able to stay out of trouble throughout most of the season, outside of his little incident with Ross Jackson, and we're going to get to that a little bit in a second, but outside of that, Urquidy really has not found himself in too much drama this year. So you got to give massive props to the 33-year-old as he chases that record for a title. This is very much looking like it's his title to lose with 6 races to go, and I'll honestly be shocked if he does. So, looking at the championship battle, even with Cameron Atwood's dominant drive, it looks like Diego's title to lose. On the other end of the spectrum, let's talk about a driver that has certainly underperformed well below expectations in 2024, and that's Ross Jackson. I think that a lot of us were a bit underwhelmed by Jackson's rookie season, to say the least. He finished 14th in points, only 5 top 10 finishes. He won Rookie of the Year going away because Schmidt and Man were just that bad. They really, really struggled last season. But looking at Jackson this year, he is 18th in points right now, and there's only 6 races to go. And I mean, he's got 5 top 10 finishes, so he's equaled his top 10 count. But the inconsistency is what is killing this team this year. 5 DNFs, that's tied for the league lead. You are not going to finish top 10 in points with 5 DNFs, uh, especially, 10 races into the season. We still have a race at Ajax. We still got races at the Stone Yard. Like, we still have races at Belltown. This is not looking very good at all for Ross Jackson. And the problem for him is, look at his teammates, second and third, right up there competing for a championship. Brent Renard obviously isn't coming back, and even he is flirting with the top 10 in points right now. Um, and then you have Jackson, who has just plummeted this season, 18th in points, below guys who we know are struggling, guys who we know are getting fired, such as Norm Lester. We'll talk about that situation a bit later on. Lucas St. Bear, these two losing their rides next season. Ryan Dixon struggling again this season. And Jackson's below all of these guys, well below them. Carson Schmidt, another guy that was on the hot seat. He's 12th in points right now. So, Jackson's well below him as well, his sophomore counterpart. And, for Jackson, the problem is he's a bit of an older rookie. He's already 23 years old. And the underperforming, I think it was excusable of it his rookie season, because we know the 88 team struggled a lot with a 2-time, 18-time Cup Series winner and Cup champion, Jimmy Hood. They struggled a lot in 2022 on Hood's farewell tour. They were not very good throughout most of the season. Don't let that win fool you. That was mainly because Diego Full sent it into turn 3 and took out himself and Todd Kidd and basically gift wrapped the victory to Jimmy Hood. But, you so the struggles for Jackson last season, I think, they were excusable. This season's struggles, you could argue they are excusable as well, because I could say that none of the DNFs were directly Jackson's fault. It's been a lot of wrong place, wrong time. I know he's had some mechanical issues as well, like he broke an axle in the Windows 300. This race, he got taken out by Diego. He was caught up in the big one at Ajax. He got taken out by Braden Bennett at the streets of Computerville. And he was also, swept up in the accident that took out Greg Healy at Belltown. So, none of them were directly Jackson's fault. And in the races that he's finished, he has top 5 finishes. But at the end of the day, this is a result of business. And when Ronnie Woods, takes a look at the point standings and sees 2 of his drivers, in championship contention inside the top 3 in points with wins on the season, he looks at Renard and he's like, well, we're getting rid of him anyways. For Colin Ward, you look at what Colin Ward's done in Craftsman, and I mean, the results speak for themselves. And then you look at Jackson and you're like, what's going on here? And then you consider the fact that Jackson's contract expires after the 2025 campaign. And I really do think that if Jackson cannot finish the season strong and start next season strong, there's a real chance he might not return to this 88 long term. So, Jackson needs a victory. He really does. And I'm not talking about a Doug Bowden Mickey Mouse victory at Ajax, where he just completely dumped the leader and took the win. No, he needs a real victory. He needs a spark, a big spark. He needs to lead some laps. He needs a pull. He needs something to really get that season for him back on track. We'll see if he's able to pull that out in the coming weeks. He needs something, because 18th in points is unacceptable. I don't care what the excuses are. You just can't have it, especially on a team as storied as Ronnie Woods Motorsports. You cannot have 18th in points. It's just unacceptable. At the end of the day, it's a result business. No one cares about your excuses. And while Jackson has plenty of excuses, the results speak for themselves. So that they gotta pull it together. Whatever they need to do, they gotta pull things together on that 88 team. So that's my thoughts on Jackson's struggles. And yeah, pretty much that. So moving on to arguably the race of the Craftsman Series season. Man, that Disney World 125, that was such a fun watch. And there were so many storylines to take out of that race. You got the points leader racking up his first DNF of the campaign, being taken out in an accident after fellow rookie Danny Bradford got loose underneath him, slid off the track into Darty, took him out, and I would say the second hottest driver in the streak of like 6 straight top 6 finishes that he had going, and basically essentially cost him the boys lead, because Colin Ward, the defending champion, was doing what he had to do, qualified on pole position, led the opening 64 laps, but then he got passed by Marcus Edwards. Edwards blew by him on the outside, and it looked like, okay, Edwards is going to be able to get himself a championship contention. He had the bad incident he was involved in on the last lap of last week's race, where he really started to fade towards the end and faded into that battle for third. And then, of course, that battle for third turned violet when Adams sent it into Adonde, and Edwards just had nowhere to go. And we all know the post-race fisticuffs that happened between those two guys. So you looked at that and said, okay, well, Edwards is finally going to be able to make a statement victory here. He's going to be able to pull away and win the race. And he would have done that if the race was 100 laps. But his teammate, Aiden Romo, had something to say about that. And Romo was the fastest car on track. That second to last run, he was really just cutting into Edwards' lead lap after lap after lap. I don't know what the 10 team found running the top, but I really thought last week, if there was going to be a week that Romo would score that first one, I really thought it would be last week at West Virginia. But of course, ironically enough, it was an incident between him and Edwards that indirectly took him out. Granted, I don't think Edwards was really at fault for that incident. He just rode on Romo's door, the racing hard for position, and Romo just happened to get arrow loose. It's just a racing deal. But Romo, he took that to heart, and he carried that little grudge over to Disney, and it showed at the finish with 10 laps to go. These two are racing hard. Romo has tracked down Edwards. They're both running the top of the racetrack. So really a bump and run isn't feasible at the top of the racetrack, because as you bump someone, they're either going into the inside wall or straight into the outside wall. If you're running the bottom, obviously it's completely different story. But on the top, really, if your only hope is to try to pull off a slide job, or try to get the bottom working, Romo said, you know what, I'm going to go for the former option. I'm going to try the slide job. And this might be the worst slide job attempt I have ever seen in my life, because Romo wasn't even close. He tried to send it in, but I think he thought better of it, because he was like, oh man, I'm driving in way too deep. I better not send it in this much. But it was too late, because he already partially sent it when I think he decided to back out of it a little bit, and he just drove right into Edwards' door and slammed him into the outside wall. slammed himself out of control and into the inside wall and took both Dexter Andrews Motorsports rides out of contention, running 1-2. What a demoralizing 6 days of spent for Dexter Andrews Motorsports. And then to make matters worse, Scranton has his struggles in the Cup race, finishes like 12th a lap down. It's been a rough past couple weeks for that organization, to say the least. And both Romo and Edwards found themselves in trouble last week, ironically enough, at West Virginia, and then they find themselves in trouble here. But you got to feel for Marcus Edwards, man. I mean, the poor guy cannot buy a break these past 2 weeks, and really, he had a big opportunity to make up some ground in this championship fight the past couple weeks with the struggles that Ward and Darty have both had, but he's just been swept up in stuff that hasn't been his fault. Wrong place, wrong time, 2 weeks in a row. So it's really a shame for that 11 team because I think they're 22 back now with 5 races to go. I have a hard time thinking that they're going to come back from this. And when the dust settled, once that incident was cleared up, Sean Wooden emerged with the lead and barely was able to hold off Tony Del on much older tires. Wooden was on 80 lap old tires. Del pitted under that caution, put on some fresh tires, and Wooden was lucky that he got a really, really good restart and that everyone else behind him created a giant roadblock by spinning their tires because that was just enough cushion for him to be able to pull away and just kind of nurse that lead from there, nurse his tires to the finish, and hold on to steal his 11th career Craftsman victory, his first of 2024. And now he's 17 back, third in points. So 5 races to go, but the real story is the top two, Darty and Ward. These two, I think, have unequivocally been the two best drivers this season. And to see them go at it like this, it's really, really fun to watch. And I think these two are certainly featured Cup superstars. I'm excited to watch them battle. I think we're going to be talking about them, 4 or 5 years down the line, battling in the Cup Series against one another, similar to the way that we've seen guys like Barrymore and Healy duking out in Craftsman. Now, of course, they duke it out in Cup on Saturdays. So I think we're going to see a very similar story with Ward and Darty. We all know Ward is going to get that call up to Cup next season. It's just a matter of when Ronnie Woods Motorsports wants to schedule a press conference to announce that. And then, for Darty, his time is coming very soon as well. He's proven that he is more than ready for a Cup ride. And, just watching these two go at it, I think, for these final 5 weeks is going to be something to behold. It's really tough because Ward, I think, has the upper hand at a lot of these tracks because he's been there, he's done that, he's already won the championship, and he held off a veteran himself last season, Sean Wooden, to do so. And now he's got the advantage of the points lead as well. So he's not coming from behind. He's got to protect. And he did that all last season. So he knows what he's doing. He's been in this spot before. He just has to execute. And the problem for this 9 team is that they haven't been able to execute. They've been making a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes that they didn't make last season. The speeding penalties, the power steering issues, the DNFs, it's all starting to kind of stack up. But, he caught a break this week with Darty running into trouble. And I think if Darty didn't have his notable struggles in the opening 2 weeks, his points lead he would have the points lead right now, and he'd be looking very big right about now, even with his DNF. So, the 98 team's slow start to the season, it hampered them. And it just goes to show you that every single race matters. No weeks off in this sport. No weeks off. You cannot afford it, especially if you want to win a championship. So I am really interested to see who comes out on top. Of course, I'm going to go with Ward. the proven champion. He's done it before. I think he can easily very much do it again. Darty has not done it before, but we'll see. Maybe he can pull it off. Now it's time to get to the big silly season news of the week. And boy, oh boy, do we have a story to cover here. So this one kind of came out of left field, I must say. At the start of the season, I did not think that this was going to happen. Norm Lester had signed a 2-year contract extension of Michael White Racing towards the end of the 2022 campaign. And obviously that was his breakout year. His career year by far, 2 victories, was a title contender throughout most of the season. And he finished, 5th in points, I believe, something like that. Really, really lights out campaign from Lester. And I think Michael White Racing kind of bought into the hype. They're like, okay, we put him in this great equipment. We gave him the opportunity to succeed, and Lester's proving, okay, he's proving his worth now. That's why we're going to bring him back for a couple more seasons and ideally have him end his career driving that number 19 and hopefully go out with the championship. However, things have really begun to deteriorate these past couple of seasons. Last year was a big struggle for this team. Lester was just meh. Like, he wasn't awful, but he also certainly wasn't anything special. He finished, I believe, 13th on the standings or something like that. Really a down year, big step back from where they were in 2022. And then this year started out an absolute disaster. Lester did not have a finish better than, I would say, like 12th in the first 4 races. He was way down there in the standings, I think like 19th in points. They fired his crew chief, Cam Rice, longtime crew chief that he won the Windows 300 with. They bring in Austin Russell, and that seemed to work a little bit. They had some early chemistry. Lester brought home a really good run at Disney, and it seemed like they were starting to right the ship a little bit. But Michael White was kind of like, could I do better than this? And then I think the Windows 300 did have, I think that's probably what kind of sparked get the ball rolling on getting Lester out of this ride, because Lester had a really fast car that night. Driven his way up to 6th, and then he just kind of lost it. In turn 3, spun down the track and took out Bennett and his teammate Bennett, who was a lot down at the time, mind you, and Bernd Renard as well. But I think that's when Michael was like, we can't do this anymore. And I think that Father Time has started to catch up with Lester. He is the oldest full-time driver in the sport at 37 years of age. And I think we're definitely starting to see a bit of regression out of him that we didn't really see much in 2022, when he was 35, putting together that career year. But now, these past couple of seasons, we're starting to see it. And I think Michael saw that and was like, we can't do this for another season, man, especially with the free agent options out there and the reports growing stronger and stronger that Michael White Racing is a huge player in this Bernd Renard sweepstakes. They're like, we can't do this. We cannot miss out on an opportunity to bring in a driver of the caliber of Renard. And I think Lester would have been able to come back if Bernd Renard wasn't available. And if Michael White Racing didn't think they had a realistic shot of bringing him in, I think they probably would bring Lester back. But this move, not picking up Lester's team option, confirms that they are all in on the Renard sweepstakes. Because if not, who do they go for? Do they bring in a Lucas Sambert? He did drive for the team in Craftsman, but he has no wins in the ASCA in general. No Craftsman wins, no Cup wins. He's shown flashes, but do you bring him in? We all know the relationship between himself and Jared Ayers and how toxic that is. So I think that's a negative. And then who else do you bring in? Carson Smith, brought back to or Keedy Bros Racing, so he's not an option. Um, Derek Lewis, Bryce Mann, are you kidding me? So looking at all of that, it has to be Renner. That has to be the guy. Like, they have to be all in on Bryn Renner, or like, who are they going to get to drive that car? Dustin Adams? Tommy Woods has been farmed out to Flores Motorsports. So it's a really tough situation. You hate to see it for Norm Lester, class act dude, and it sucks to see him go out this way, especially with how his Michael White Racing tenure began with a Windows Rented victory and then a breakout season. But the past couple seasons, there's no denying that he's been underwhelming, and you could argue, that's for because of a number of different circumstances, but the results are the results. Excuses, some excuses, no one cares about your excuses. They care about the results, and the results have not been up to par with Michael White Racing standards. They haven't been up to par with his own teammates. So it's a tough deal for Lester, and this might be the end of the road for him, honestly. At 37, I have no idea where he's going to land next season. Maybe it's New Enterprises, Dexter Anthony Motorsports. They want to bring in a veteran driver. They can bring him in. We know Taylor Motorsports, they're really all in on the Bryn Reddit sweepstakes as well. And it's basically, it kind of seems like it's a bidding war between Taylor Motorsports and Michael White Racing for who's going to be able to bring in Bryn Renard. And we'll see who ends up winning that. But it's going to be very interesting to kind of see how this whole situation plays out. Like, who gets the 19 and where does Lester land? Because this divorce, I think if you told me that they were going to divorce at the start of the season, I would not have seen this coming. Even with Lester's struggles, I thought that Michael White Racing was at least going to let him see out his contract, but the ASA is a cutthroat business, man. If you're not getting the results that they want, the door's there. You can leave. So, tough situation for everyone involved. But, on a positive note for Michael White Racing, they did give someone their big break who certainly deserves it. Tony Del Valle II, full time in the Craftsman Series next season in the number 20, which once Tommy Woods was announced to the Cup Series, I think this was pretty much expected. You had to know this was going to be coming. With the spectacular results that Del Valle has put together this season. Qualifying on pole position in your debut at 17 years of age. What more do you need to say to prove that this kid is the real deal? And then he finishing fourth in that race. On top of that, bouncing back from a pit road penalty to finish sixth at West Virginia. I know he got helped tremendously by that last lap accident, but still pretty solid recovery. Was running at the end of that race, and then second to Sean Wooden, even after all of his struggles at Disney. Really nice recovery from him there. So I'm really liking what I've seen out of Del Valle so far. Nothing so far has really changed my perception that this kid's going to be special in the ASCA someday and is going to be a future Cup superstar. And now you put him full time in the number 20. I am really excited to see him and Graham Doherty potentially go at it next season for the Craftsman Series title. What a battle that's going to be between those two. Assuming Doherty doesn't, get a cup ride out of nowhere, which by all intents and purposes, it looks like he's going to return to the 98 next season. But yeah, Del Valle versus Doherty for the Craftsman Series Championship. Sign me up for that, dude. It is going to be something special. I really do think. And, for Del Valle, that is the future of Michael White Racing. Like, they cannot make the same mistakes that they made with Colin Ward, with Ryan Dixon, with a lot of these other guys that they've had. They cannot let this guy out of their sight. They need to keep him locked up long term. I don't care what you have to do I don't care if you need to make this kid the highest paid driver in the sport to convince him to stick around at your organization long term. You cannot let this kid go anywhere else. You already made that mistake with Colin Ward. You kept Tommy Woods full time instead of promoting Colin Ward full time to the 20s. And Ward was like, you know what, F this. I'm not going to run part time again. Ronnie Woods just gave me a call, gave me a full time ride. Rest is history. Like, you cannot let a driver of the caliber of Del Val. It's tough to say what Ward would have done in this sport at 17 years of age, because obviously he was dirt track racing. But you could argue the talent level is very comparable between Del Val and Ward. Honestly, like, really, it could very well be the case. And I really think that finally, Ford and Toyota have seen the investment that Chevy has put in their young drivers, and they're seeing the fruits of their labors start to, bear a bit this season with guys like Kidd and Park and Scranton. And Healy's had his struggles, but of course he's a past champion. All these guys really starting to do stuff. And then you have Ward coming up in the pipeline. Like, and finally seems like the Blue Ovals and Toyota are starting to learn. And now, for Ford, they got Darty and Adonde. And now for Toyota, they have Adams and Del Val. So the future of the sport is very bright with what the talent level we're seeing in the Craftsman Series right now. Next year is going to be special, man. It is really going to be special. So I am super, super, super excited to see what Del Val can do full time in Craftsman next season. That's going to be fun. But finally, we're on to Denver. Ajax Cup is staying on the West Coast for the Craftsman Series. They're traveling cross country from Florida to Colorado. And finally, for the first time in 3 weeks, Cup and Craftsman will be at the same track on the same race weekend. So that means Cup driver is going to be back in the Craftsman race. I'm sure the Craftsman regulars probably aren't too happy about that. They're going to have a tough time competing against the likes of Jared Ayers, Chris Barrymore, Doug Bowden, and Derek Lewis. But it's going to be a fun weekend of racing, I think. It's been a while since we've seen a Denver race. Since October of 2023? Actually, no, September of 2023. It's been 22, 23 races, because Denver was super early in the season, for its first 4 iterations. And now it's deep in the season. It's on the stretch run to the championship. So really completely different feel to this race this season than last season. There's a lot more pressure, a lot more kind of build up anticipation. And obviously each race on the schedule means, the same amount in terms of the points payout. But I feel like the atmosphere is always ramped up when we get down to the stretch of the season. And because you're always looking at championship and points, we're locked in on points at this part of the campaign. So I think for Craftsman, that's the big battle is going to be Ward and Darty. Where are they going to end up in qualifying, and where are they going to end up in the race? Will either of them have anything for the Cup drivers at the front of the field? I certainly think it's possible, although this was a race that one of the 3 times, I should say, that Ward finished outside the top 5 last season was at Denver. I believe he finished 8th or something. He really kind of struggled here. And by struggled, 8th place finish, I mean, in comparison to, where he was normally running last season with that Camaro. But, for Darty, he's never been here. He's never seen this track before. So he has no idea what to expect. Boy, that's got to be a pressure situation for him, to say the least. And that'll certainly be the case tenfold when we get to the Stone Yard in a couple weeks. But Denver in itself is a super hard track to drive. 1 mile oval, but it's extremely you gotta be extremely patient here on the throttle. Tire management is huge. Um, so, it's going to be really interesting to see how those two can do managing their equipment, managing their tires. And yeah, but then for Cup, I think this is another one of those tracks right in Cameron Atwood's wheelhouse. Like I just said, tire management, patience, saving your stuff, long runs. This is all Cameron Atwood. And it's fitting that he scored his first Cup win here and scored his third win in a row here last season. Don't be shocked to see him win again and go back to back. Honestly, I'd be more shocked if he didn't win this race because it just suits him so well. But I think his teammate Chris Barrymore is also going to be another guy that's going to be right up there, right in contention. Up there to win. He's won this race before. He's also been really, really good here throughout the years, led a bunch of laps here in the past, and he's doing double duty as well. So that extra experience of running the Craftsman race, I think, certainly can't hurt him. Can't hurt him at all. So going to be a really, really interesting weekend of racing. So I'm really excited for this weekend at Denver. Like I said, it's been so long since we've raced here. I think it's going to be super fun. And my picks for this week, got to go with the status quo. Actually, I'm not going to go with the status quo. Give me Doug Bowden for Craftsman. I sound like Tico Bowden in the booth. Tico, of course, picks his son every week, but give me Doug Bowden in Craftsman. He came so close to winning this race last season before Alex Dennis moment. And I really think that I think he deserves redemption here. Like, he was so close to winning this race last season, and he had the best car until, Bennett kind of caught him at the end, but we didn't get to see a fair fight between the two. Obviously, it was marred by lap traffic. So I think Doug Bowden's got a point to prove. I think he will prove that point in this race, and he's going to be able to take home the Craftsman victory. On the Cup side of things, I think my pick is pretty obvious. I kind of just said it a bit ago. It's Cameron Atwood again. I picked him to win at Advocare, and well, that worked out pretty well. So, like I said, this track just fits in Atwood's wheelhouse so well as, a circuit that he would excel at with the characteristics of it, as I mentioned. And he's got some momentum now, positive momentum. He won this race last year. He's the only two-time winner of this at this track, and it's 4 iterations so far. Mind you, no non-Ford has won at Denver so far. So give me Cameron Atwood to win this race. I think it's going to be a fun one, though, on Friday and Saturday, and certainly going to be a big one. We're going to learn a lot about both championship fights as well. But that's it for this edition of the ASCA Weekly Podcast. Shout out to the podcast premier partners, Pain Scheme Stalker on Instagram, Rowdy Energy, and Circle B Diecast. Don't forget, use coupon code ASCA for free shipping on any orders $20 or more in the U.S. And that's pretty much it. Appreciate the two of you that listened to the episode this far. And we will see you to recap all the action at Denver, heading into another race at Ajax Super Speedway next week. That's going to be a fun one. But this is Charles Fallon signing out.